Hi everyone, today's February 9th, 2019, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger.
And I'm Deck Tech.
And this is a very special episode. It's episode 100.
Woo!
We ourselves can't believe that we made it this far. It has exceeded all expectations. And this episode we're going to have a celebration in the second half of this episode, basically celebrating with our viewers, people who love this game, and answering some of your questions. But besides the celebration, this week we saw a bunch of new things going on in the game, primarily the arrival of Ancient Gears again, so it's new revival of Ancient Gears, new cards coming with the structure deck, and of course the Kaiba Cup began, so lots going on in addition to our celebration, which fits well. I mean, there's enough stuff going on this week. So, Tech, where are you this week in our 100th episode?
Yeah, so I would have liked to pop champagne or something, except we record at 8 a.m. my time, so
right.
Seems a little inappropriate at this point, but we're doing it in spirit. In terms of what I'm actually doing, I've kind of been struggling to find a deck to play. You guys know I talked about this a little while ago. I ended up trying the Gustos, and they were really fun. They worked pretty well also for 5 days. And then the Ancient Gears structure deck came out, and it is just the worst matchup. The whole point of the Gustos deck is you put your guys in defense position, and then when your opponent attacks into them, they kind of filter themselves, and you get more, and so by doing that you fill up your graveyard while also keeping guys on the board, and also you're fairly reliant on traps once you get Arm ADDs out, and so all of that is canceled by Ancient Gear effects, and so the deck essentially does not, it just plays really weak monsters, and there's just really not much I could do against that deck, which was pretty prevalent where I am, both in the regular ladder and also in the KC Cup once it got released. And so I kind of just had to move off of that. I saw a really cool idea in the Street Replays for a Toon deck, but I couldn't play it because I didn't have the right skill, which is just the worst because I've been trying to farm skills forever and still trying to farm skills. So then I moved on to decks that I did have cards for and the skills for. So I tried Amazoness again with the Baby Tiger. It's okay. I just this morning tried a little bit of Gem Knights. It so far is working pretty well, but I'm also playing at the low rank, so I'm not sure how long that's going to last. I'm taking my car in today, so I'll have a little bit more time to play and try out what I want to do. I'm thinking it might end up just be me playing Blue Eyes again, falling back on that deck because that worked well. It was kind of the last time I had a really good, solid deck. I took it to Game Games. So
last gamble on Blue Eyes.
What's that?
Last gamble on Blue Eyes.
Yeah, there you go. That might be it, except not that skill. But how about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, so I got Platinum. No, I got Legends last month, so I started in DL10, and I mentioned before how I had a bunch of options. I could play Vampires, I could play Karakuri, I bought Ancient Gears twice, so I could have played a horrible version there, but I decided to go with Vampires, and specifically Bandit Vampires. I hit King of Games with the Kiza Synchro Vampires before, and the Ishizu skill. So Bandit was never a skill that I used a lot, but it's the one that's everyone's using, so I decided to do it. I made a new deck, which is just, all your vampire cards, and then you put a few other cards in. And then I got all the way to DL19, and I'm losing a lot of games at DL19, but I have not D-ranked yet. They seem to be very generous on how many games you could lose. I think I'm 1 out of my last 7 or 8, I'm not sure. But I should hit 20 in a few days, and we have enough time to do that. So, and also, as I mentioned, I did buy the Ancient Gears thing twice. I didn't buy 3 times because I don't feel like spending money on it. But on two times, I did play the deck a lot on ranked, and I went all the way down to Plat 1, so it's kind of the deck that well, we're going to talk about the deck later, but it seems like a deck that you need three of to be really good.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm still playing at the low ranks where people are doing it without, but I guess they're at the low ranks, so that kind of maybe explains that.
All right, this week in esports, we're just going to talk about one thing and one thing only. That's the Duel Links Meta Weekly 58. So this happened on Wednesday, and the Ancient Gear structure deck has it arrived by this point. It was the most represented deck, but it did not succeed. I guess it's a very powerful deck, but these top level players play very well against a predictable deck.
Yeah, it's also new, so there's two things going on there. When a deck is new, it usually means it gets a lot of like hype representation from the full deck breakdown. But at the same time, it often also means that it's not refined. And so it could be that a lot of people brought it just because it's the new thing and they're excited to try something new, but they don't know how to play it or the deck's not quite optimal yet.
Yeah.
And so that's why it didn't do well. There is also the alternative where the deck might be like, if it ends up being better than you expect, like Karakuri kind of were, I think, then what happens is the meta kind of takes a while to respond to that. And then, so you kind of get the opposite effect where it starts off doing well or it builds over time instead of getting worse because people haven't responded to it. So, it's hard to say from its very first outing where its power level lies because there's all these different things at tension here. But it does seem like some of the hate cards some of the meta was already ready for it, both because they were predicting it to come in waves, and also some of the hate cards just kind of have splash hate with the Karakuri, who were already in the meta and started to kind of dominate a little bit. And so it just did not do well in this tournament.
First place, Raul Torres, tie that binds Kawaki Meru. So if you looked at a Kawaki Meru deck every week like we have, you kind of notice it hasn't changed much, but this deck has changed just because of Ancient Gears. There's two Cosmic Cyclones. That's to get rid of their spells so they can't, special summon their guys. And additionally, tie that binds. So that lets Maximus get over the Reactor Dragon.
Yeah, and we've seen enemy controller, in ones as a one of in the deck or in the sideboard or whatever. Putting two in the main deck is also probably a reaction to Ancient Gears as well, because that's a really good way to kill them, is just to steal their guy and attack for 3,000 or whatever. So all of those they seem like fairly small changes, but they seem to all be designed to help beat that one specific matchup.
Second place, HNT Atem, Bandit Vampires. And so Vampires are very good against Ancient Gears because of the Vamp. And this one has two mirror walls that kind of helps them with the Bandit. This might be the way to go. This is 23 cards though, so I have personally found that I lose my games because I've bricked. And this could kind of lead you down that path. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Cool. Sounds good. We're seeing the Vampires are having kind of weird sideboards. I don't know. They're having fun with it. Putting in a random Anki and a random Buster.
Yeah, I don't know what that's for. This guy, it just puts 5 synchros in. That's just me.
Yeah, the next guy also did it, which I thought was weird. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, maybe every once in a while they plan to steal the Buster Blader guy. That
Hex, yeah. The fusion, yeah.
So maybe that's it.
Yeah. Third place, Nyx, Access Denied Vampire. So I think this is the first time we're seeing Access Denied. But it seems like it's a general good skill, kind of like the Ishizu Sealed Tomb skill. Use it when your life points are 1,000 or below, so vampires do that pretty easily. And this one has a bunch of things to make you lose life as well. 21 card deck, which I like a little more than 23 at this point. Yeah, same deck pretty much.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar idea where the point is that you do everything you need to do, and then you use the skill to kind of lock your opponent out for a turn so that you can then close the game out the next turn. and it seems to work pretty well. The mirror wall both helps activate the skill and also helps kind of protect you once you've got your big guys out, and then all they can do is just like normal summon the next turn or whatever. Oh, it can't even do that.
Oh, they can't? Yep.
Yeah.
Completely locked out. This deck just specializes at getting at 1,000.
There you go.
And third place, Dulling, Tie That Binds, Kawaki Meru. This one has an ice and a wall. I guess they all have an ice and a wall, kind of to counter spells. They work pretty well against the Ancient Gear spells. It doesn't have Cosmic Cyclone. I think that's what I was trying to get at. Cosmic Cyclone is the natural counter against the Ancient Gear spells, but this one was still good enough to beat all of them. So.
Yeah, or dodge enough of them that he could still make that cut. One of the things that we talked about before the show and then we didn't mention just now was that the sideboard cards also kind of help. He's got the System Down, which is a good sideboard choice because it hurts the Karakuris, but also hurts the Ancient Gears. So, and then we also see, of course, he's got the 2 econs available, one in the main, one in the side. So a couple decks brought sideboard cards like that have that splash hate that I think makes it a little bit less hospitable to Ancient Gears just on their first outing like that. Just right off the bat, they're automatically getting hated. Whereas a lot of other new decks, because if they don't have that splash hate, they're not automatically getting hated out on their first tournament. So that's part of why they didn't do as well.
Yep. All right. So with Ancient Gears, the Duel Links meta tier list has also responded in kind.
Yeah, we had a few changes. One of them is that Buster Blader was demoted back down to tier 2. They say part of that is that the unfavorable matchup versus Ancient Gears, but also it just felt to me like it was more of a good meta deck, a solid adaptation to a meta that was heavily saturated with Kawaki Meru, but there was really not a huge, it wasn't the power deck. It was kind of just a good meta call. So it makes sense to me that it's more of a tier 2 deck that you sometimes bring as your best choice depending on what you predict the meta to be. The high potential, all the other decks in the tier list stayed in the same spot. The high potential tier list portion changed, however. They added Ancient Gears to it and also Mecha Phantom Beasts. And the Ancient Gears ended up kicking out Gustos because Gustos, like we talked about, just gets destroyed by Ancient Gears. And so it's no longer on the high potential, and these guys are. I haven't actually, we saw a little bit of Mecha Phantom Beast, but I think that's going to get kicked off probably as well.
Yeah, it seems like that one card's being used, the Tether Wolf, but I haven't seen the full package itself.
Yeah, and then we didn't see any in this week's thing, so it might have just been like a flash in the pan.
So basically, this tier list update is no me gusto. No me gusto. It was a really fun deck. I really enjoyed it. I didn't do well with it, but it was fun to play.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's a bummer it didn't last that long.
All right. We're going to talk about the new Ancient Gear box. Of course, after the outrage of the Silent Magician deck, we could buy one of the Structure Deck EXs for gems, so you could buy it for 1,000, and then you spend $4, and then the next one's 7, I believe. So that's why I didn't buy the third one, because 7 is that's lunch right there. So, so there were a lot of goods and bads, I feel like, about this Structure Deck. The bad thing is, the good thing is they let us buy it for gems, but they only give you one of each of the really good cards. And by that I mean the Reactor Dragon, the Gear Town, the Wyvern, and the Fortress. So those are all cards that they give you one of. The Wyvern being at a 2 would have made me say, oh, this has some value. But they only give you one Wyvern, and that's a card you really want 3 of. So, and how it works, it's very simple. You get your Gear Town and your Ancient Gear Fortress, you destroy them, and then you cheat out your Reactor Dragon. That's all this deck does. So, yeah.
Yeah, and whereas before we had to kind of play the deck as like a mid-range deck with a solid finisher because you had to play a couple guys to build up your whatever it was called.
Asshole, yeah.
Yeah, the castle to cheat out the real big guy, the ancient gear golem. Uh, Now you can do it much faster by, like you said, just destroying your own cards. And so now you can kind of play. It seems to me, I've only played it a couple times, and like I said, I played against it. I haven't played it at all, but I played against it a couple times at the lower ranks. It seems like everyone's playing it more like a combo deck, where I'm
Yeah.
seeing it. Is that how you're seeing it being played as well?
That's the only way. I mean, there's another way. I've seen people play the Gear Golems, and they're the fusion based deck. I've seen that. But the main way is that combo deck just with the Reactor Dragon.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So that's what you're doing. You're just getting out a huge guy on turn one or turn two, and you can actually get out like multiple of them. I've had people just go from nothing to like two or three of them. So has a lot of explosive power, a lot of big power plays, and it has to makes you, or let's say it's shaking up the back row and stuff that we would
Hmm.
normally be playing because it counters a lot of those in
Battle phase.
combat
Yeah.
traps and stuff that we are had gotten used to playing, and also destroying spells and traps is no longer a good call. So like we talked about in the deck section or in the tournament section, people are switching from destruction effects to banish effects. So it's interesting how it's changing the meta in that sense, and we'll see how long and how big of a lasting impact it has.
Yeah. And I think what decides this deck is what the support cards are. So right now, some people are using Breaker the Magical Warrior, Unending Nightmare, Double Cyclone, Twister, Typhoon, and even Dispel. These are the cards that you would use to destroy the Gear Town or the Ancient Gear Fortress. So I think those are the cards that's gonna refine the deck. Double Cyclone in particular is a card that actually counters Cosmic Cyclone because you could chain it to your hand and destroy their Cosmic Cyclone, and then you could just your instead of being banished, your Gear Town gets destroyed, and then you get your monster out. So that's the one card that counters the Cosmic Cyclone. Actually, I think the other ones are a little slower. I think
Yeah, there's the I forget what he's called, but the 2200 dragon guy that we used in the Gusto
oh, the
deck,
Mana Dragon, yeah.
but that's much slower. So you might as well not do that.
What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, skills. I've seen people play the Crowler skill. The Crowler skill kind of works better with the Ancient Gear Golem because that's what you're trying to cheat out. But I have seen balance. There are definitely skills beatdown and tie that binds to get over their reactor dragons. So a lot is undetermined right now.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely still a lot of room to play with the deck, and also even like aside from making it the quote ideal version, just as the meta adapts to it, you maybe want to change what you're doing to adapt the meta adaptations to the deck to try to stay one step ahead. I think that probably just the base version is good enough for the first phase of the KC Cup, but it'll be interesting to see how it kind of grows over time and if it's good enough for phase two and what the phase two version looks like. It's always cool when you get like the stats at the end of the KC Cup and there's a big surprise deck. Nothing has quite been the same as that first KC Cup where Decade kind of came crashing onto the scene by just totally blowing everyone out of the water with this totally unexpected deck. But there's still sometimes some surprises and some cool decks that we get to see, and it'll be interesting to see if this one becomes one of those or if it ends up just being like the same thing as the structure deck, but with a couple extra copies of the best cards.
About the cards, Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon. This is a 3,000. It can be special summoned, so that's what makes it in the deck. It has the ability where it just gets by back row, but its ability is when you tribute a gadget monster, make a second attack. That's not really relevant, but after it attacks, at the end of the damage step, you can destroy a spell or trap. So you could kind of clear out those wall of D's that your other guy didn't hit into, so it's kind of like extra back row disruption. And of course, the biggest thing is it can be special summoned, so that's why people are playing this card over the Golem.
Yeah, exactly. It's very explosive. That special summon ability, just like we were talking about, it lets you go from 0 to like 3. So
Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound. This is a retrained version of Ancient Gear Golem, so it's better in every single way. It cannot be special summoned. It does piercing up to twice per turn. When it destroys a monster, you can discard a machine. It can attack again. When it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add polymerization from your deck to your hand. Also add an Ancient Gear monster from your graveyard. So if you're playing the fusion version of the deck, and with Crowler, this is the one you use. But the other version is just superior. It could kind of be like a surprise factor card maybe, but it doesn't fit with the Reactor Dragon.
mm-hmm.
Shredder. I've seen people play this card when they just bought the deck, I guess. A level 4 machine, 1600, 1000. Once per turn, send the machine from your hand to the graveyard. Target one monster your opponent controls with a level less than that monster, destroy it. Slow removal, it kind of works with resurrection strategies, so if you use like a powerful rebirth on what you discarded, there could be some value there.
Yeah, but only for like small things.
Yep.
If you want to combine it in that way, so that doesn't seem as good. And like you said, I guess it's not really making the cut in the more refined versions.
Right, it doesn't appear at all. I've just seen it in a guy who just bought this deck and decided to play it.
Yeah.
It could be something you could do with like machine synchros where you add a level to the tuner you just throw away and then becomes like a level 8 Stardust Dragon, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if it weren't limited to machine types that you had to send, then I think there would be a lot of uses there. I would love to use it in like Blue Eyes, but obviously I can't.
Gear Town spell, a field spell. Both players can normal summon Ancient Gear monsters for one less tribute. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So there's 2 ramp spells in this deck. This is the better one because you could special summon from the deck. And the first ability isn't really useful. I haven't seen people play Engineers or Beasts for free, but you can do that if you're short some monsters. And notably, Wild Tornado does not destroy this card, so don't use Wild Tornado in the deck.
Yeah, this is, I think, something that we've talked about. Spell and Trap Zone. I get it. Never mind.
I tried it. That's why I know.
Different issue than we've talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the better ramp spell. Let's see. Ancient Gear Hydra. This is a card no one plays. 7-star, 2700, 1700. It has the Ancient Gear ability as well. Let's see. When this card, at the end of the damage step, when this card is tribute summoned by tributing an Ancient Gear monster, it battles a monster. The opponent's monster that was not destroyed by battle can be banished. Can attack multiple times, I think. I don't know, but this is kind of like an extra monster. If, let's say, you bought the deck once or twice and you don't have enough Ancient Gear Reactor Dragons, you could kind of use this, but it's not really a card you would play. It's like a budget card, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
Ancient Gear Frame. This works with the Ancient Gear Golem. 4-star, 1600, 500. Discard a card, add an Ancient Gear Golem or a spell or trap that lists Ancient Gear Golem and its text from your deck to your hand. So tutors, but you have to discard first. You can use this effect once per turn. It nullifies spells and traps. When this leaves the field because of a card effect, you can special summon up to 3 Ancient Gear Golems or Ultimate Pounds from your hand. So that last ability is pretty flashy, but it's kind of conditional. Your opponent should know not to effect destroy a 1600 guy. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing you could do is you could just protect it with back row if you play the deck a little differently, but that's not really what we need to do because we can just cheat stuff out faster instead of relying on our opponent to.
This is a very important card. Ancient Gear Wyvern, 4-star, 1700, 1200. When this is normal or special summoned, add an Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand, except for Ancient Gear Wyvern. You can't set cards from the rest of this turn. So that's a very important thing as well. I have often played this card, and then I forget to play. I can't play my protection. So This is a card you need 3 of. This is a card that you would fetch. If you have your Gear Town and your Fortress, you would fetch your Reactor Dragon. Otherwise, you would set up by getting those cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great card. Kind of like the engine of the deck. Just to kind of, I guess, lubricate all the gears, make it go a little smoother, and definitely an important card, which, like you said, you have to buy this thing through 2-3 times because you definitely want those.
Ancient Gear Fortress, continuous spell. During the turn they are normal or special summons, your opponent cannot target Ancient Gear monsters you control with card effects, and they can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to the activation of Ancient Gear cards and effects. If this card is destroyed, special summon Ancient Gear monster from your hand or graveyard. So this is a protection card. You play this first, and then your monsters can't be targeted they can't be hit by anything your opponent plays for that turn. And it's a worse ramp card because you can't get it from the deck. You can't get your monsters from the deck, but you don't just run Gear Towns. You have to run both of these. So
yeah, I would say like you get to run both because it's just so much extra consistency. Even if it's a little worse, it's still good enough to play, and that you're probably happy to play it. So.
And Iron Call, normal spell. If you control a machine, target 1 level 4 or lower machine in your graveyard, special summon. Its effects are negated, destroyed during the end phase. Not a fit for the deck, it's a filler, but it could be something for fusions or synchros.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess you could see some kind of interesting stuff there, but yeah, it's mostly just for synchros.
Yeah. So we're getting some bingo again. So 3 sheets of bingo from the tour guide. Just another way to earn gems, I guess. In addition to the Kaiba Cup, so it's definitely a great way for us to get gems again. We get some cards. I think a meme going on. There's always a meme going on when you see some really old monster come back. So I think we're getting extra copies of the Giant Soldier Stone and the Clayman. And people are saying these are like tier 1 cards. We get to play our Claymans again, so.
Yay. Yeah, I finished these up. Did you finish them all up?
Yes.
So we did it. We got to see her face, too. She's
awkward. Awkward face. I don't know what you call that.
Yeah.
Alright, we get 1 new card from this. We get 2 copies of this, I believe. It's the Mock Synchron, 1-star Machine Tuner. During 0/0, that's important. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard because it was sent there this turn being used for synchro material for synchro summon, you can target 1 other synchro material monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So basically the other monster you use to the synchro summon, you get it back. And it's a niche card, like any other tuner, it's niche. It's not going to be better than Junk Synchron, but there could be a situation in the future where it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where once the right cards come around, then maybe you get to play it. So it's one of those ones that you just kind of have to keep in your mind as something that might end up at some point being useful.
The card flipper campaign is also here. We're getting a new card and then a second copy of Lucius the Shadow Vassal. The new card is Violon Alpha, 9-star Machine Synchro, 2200, 1100. Materials include a Violon Tuner and something else. When this card is synchro summoned, target an equipped spell from your graveyard, equip that to this card. When this card is equipped with an equipped card, it can't be destroyed by spell or trap effects except for equipped cards. So what's the big problem with this card?
Well, it's a 9-star 2200, 1100.
Yep. So a Samurai Skull can destroy this when they're at the field. So I mean, it's a lot of setup for a weak monster.
Yeah, and then any of the effects that flip it into defense position, then pretty much anything can destroy it.
Celtic Guardian, Beaver Warrior, those things could destroy it, right?
Yes, Beaver Warrior meta.
Beaver Warrior came back when they had the dice game, right? That guy just came back.
Well, he was in it, yeah.
they had everyone in it, though, frankly. It's like 50 monsters you could face.
Yeah.
Alright. Big announcement. The Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2019 was announced with a place and time somewhere in Berlin, Germany, on August 10th and 11th. It goes along with the card game, so it's kind of a different division. And Duel Links has funded itself another tournament, so that means the game's doing fine, I guess.
Yeah, it was its own separate division last time as well, and I'm not at all surprised that it's doing well enough to warrant another world championship spot. In fact, it's doing so well that it's creeping into the real world, as we talked about a little bit before with the speed duels thing. So I think it's definitely doing well enough to warrant some attention from Konami.
Do you think it's making more money than the card game? It could possibly be.
I don't know. It could be. It's definitely making enough for it to matter, but I don't know if it's making more than the physical card game.
Speaking of the physical card game, the OCG, which is original card game, the Japanese version of Paper Yu-Gi-Oh, celebrated its 20th anniversary this recently, I guess. So that's when the card game was made, I guess 1999. That was before it came to America, so they were releasing those horrible monsters with blue eyes and dark magician. And we got party favors, which is card sleeves and an icon. So I am using these card sleeves, so I guess it's something.
There you go. Do you know offhand if the show or the card game came first?
So there was the manga. The manga came first, I think, and then
okay.
The OCG. Yeah, I think the show was after 1999 because I think it came in America 2001 or 2002. I forget. Shortly after 9/11 happened, so I remember it was around then. And then the Japanese show was probably a year before.
Hmm. Okay, cool.
All right. So it's the time everyone's been waiting for. We have enough time to do this. It's our 100th episode. Yeah. How did we get here?
How did we get here? Well, now it's 8:45, so we can pop open some champagne.
That's official drinking time. Right?
Yeah.
No, we
it's
need to use
8:45 somewhere.
We need to use Four Loco so we have some energy for the rest of the day. Is that how it works?
Oh, jeez. Have you ever had Four Loco?
Yeah, yes, I have.
Oh.
I was a distributor of Four Loco in college.
That stuff was terrible.
Was. Yeah, it was. All right. So how this is going to work, I guess we're going to talk about some earlier this week we sent a tweet asking people to celebrate with us, and we did get enough responses to talk about, so thank you for not letting us celebrate alone. It means a lot to us for that.
Yeah, it was really cool. You guys answered our call. It wasn't just in the tweet, it was also, well, I guess we got these responses from the tweet, but we asked for it, of course, over the show last week as well. So anyway, I agree. Thanks for answering, so we didn't have to, come up with something ourselves.
Yep. I didn't write the exact tweets. I kind of summarized what was said, but Brutal Rampage 69 asked, what archetypes would you like to see added to Duel Links? What do you think is an ideal meta? So, disclaimer, when did you stop playing the card game again?
There was this big nerf phase when BLS Envoy of the Beginning was nerfed, as well as half the cards from that Chaos deck. I don't remember when that was, but it was essentially right after I built the deck. They all
You bought
nerfed.
the cards independently, right? You have to remind everyone that, yes.
Yes, I did. Yeah. So that was terrible, and I quit because of it.
I quit because no one played it in high school. 8th grade was the last time I played it. Yeah. So this was a long time ago, right? More than 15 years ago.
Yeah, and relevant to this question is the fact that I didn't really play, so I played at the very beginning when the game first came out. I just bought 2 starter decks, and I didn't play at a very high level. I just played with those very basic decks. And then I kind of didn't really play too much in between. And then a couple years later, I think, this card came out. And I was like, that deck seems kind of fun. Everyone at the card shop's playing that deck, and everyone's saying it's the best deck. So I ended up going and buying, spending I think a couple $100 buying that deck, specifically that deck, and then that's when all the cards got nerfed for it. So I pretty much played like janky early, first year Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I
Yeah.
played nothing for a couple years, and then I played that one deck, which then subsequently got banned essentially, and then I stopped playing the game. So I have very little experience with the CCG.
Right. Same thing. I bought booster packs. That's the only way I played, or I got cards for free from people. So I was even worse. And I was buying booster packs from the first set, but it wasn't a ton. I bought like a few from each set because I was poor. And I think the last cards I got were like Invasion of Chaos or Dark Crisis, somewhere around there. It's like when they had the first Gravekeeper cards. I think Pharaoh's Servant around that time. So I stopped then. A lot of the archetypes we see in Duel Links are the ones we're seeing for the first time. And people have said for hires are horrible in the CCG, but they're amazing. They were amazing in Duel Links, and they didn't really understand that, and we don't understand that either, I guess.
Yeah, we just don't have that background that some of the other like players and content creators do. Um, I'd like to use that as an excuse why sometimes we're wrong on our predictions because other
Yeah.
people have a lot more background and they've seen like how the deck works together and stuff. Um, but all of this whole long thing was to say I I don't have any really archetypes I'd like to see added to Duel Links. Did you
Yep.
have any that came to your mind, or are you in the same
No,
boat? Yeah.
same boat. I think one thing is Gravekeepers never really had full support, and they were good in the beginning of this game, but that was it. That was because you could cheat out the guy. Um, that's it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were okay for a little while. I've heard a lot of people say that they never got full support as well. And then also in the very early stages of the game, I'm not even sure if they were that good. I think it was just people didn't really
You
have
wanted to play
a
it,
lot of like options, didn't really know how to play that well, all of that stuff. So
right? Um, but the second part of Brutal Rampage 69's is what do you think is an ideal meta?
yeah, so this is a an interesting question that I do have more insight and opinions on. I do think we're in a pretty decent spot for. So the meta means the game within the game, and usually that is taken to mean like the number of viable decks, how the decks kind of relate to each other, and I guess I guess what those decks are made up of. And I do think we do have a pretty good split between those. I think our meta is pretty healthy in that sense. There's a lot of possible decks and a good amount of viable decks at a competitive level. Um, they they do keep it fresh by constantly introducing new cards,
Yeah,
but that's a different question that we're going to talk about in a sec. Uh, One very impressive thing about it is that Yu-Gi-Oh does not really have um, a mana system or a class system to split up decks in the way that other card games do. Magic, of course, has the 5 colors. Um, Hearthstone has the 9 character classes, and the reason why card games have that is because they are afraid that otherwise everyone would just play what's called a good stuff deck, or they would just play the best cards. And so Yu-Gi-Oh, without having that, has this unique problem where if they're not careful, everyone would just run the exact same deck, or maybe small tweaks on it, but they would have just the best cards in their deck because there's no restrictions on what you can use. And I think that was the reason why they actually ended up banning that Chaos deck that I ended up buying and stuff, is because it was slightly tuned for that synergy, but mostly it was just like I'm just going to play the best cards, and they happen to work out all together and have some synergy with a tiny bit of tweaking to make that so. And as a result, Yu-Gi-Oh has to do this cool thing where they make synergies very strong with the different archetypes. So like all of my Ancient Gear cards work really well with each other, and all my Masked Heroes cards work really well with each other, and it's hard to kind of splash them into other stuff. And I guess that's not directly answering your question, but I'm impressed by how well they've handled it, and I do think they're doing a pretty good job of that. We'll talk about things like rotation and all, all that stuff in subsequent questions. But
Yeah.
within the system that Yu-Gi-Oh has, I think the Yu-Gi-Oh and Duel Links have done an astonishingly good job of making sure there's a good amount of options to choose from, and that they're pretty balanced amongst each other. You can bring almost any deck to almost any level of competition. It's only at the very highest level, like the Duel Links meta tournaments, where it really matters that much. And even then, there's, a solid 5-10 decks that you can bring at any given time. You'll see, the strongest ones rising to the top most often, but you'll still every once in a while see like a new deck or something, and that's really cool.
Yeah. This game is very layered. I think in addition to the archetypes, there are attributes, there are types. So there's like a lot of, and then there are also synergies with what level you are, what attack you are. So there's a lot going on, and I do agree. There were times where I hated the metas. I feel like there were times when everyone was playing there were only like a few decks, but now it's a little better. There's a lot of options to pick from. I agree with that. The meta is okay right now.
Yeah. So a lot of the classic things you look at are number of decks that are viable, and then how their matchups go. And it seems to me that there's a good number of decks. They're varied, which is another, I guess, an easy way to distinguish the different decks. And the matchups aren't so polarizing that you feel like you just automatically win or lose depending on what your, I guess what skill your opponent uses in the first second of the game, unless you're running Gustos and the first thing they do is something related to Ancient Gears. So
Yeah.
all in all, I think it's a very, very solid meta. I think they're doing a good job within the constraints of the game that they're working with.
And just another thing, I think going first versus second is a problem. I don't think that's a problem that can be resolved just because you have second turn initiative, but that's probably like the one thing. If you're going second, you're probably going to win. that thing.
Yeah, I mean that's another problem. I think there are a couple problems with the gameplay, and one of them is that it's probably gotten too extreme. And we've been in this place before with when we had to nerf the Cyber Angels, right? Where games were kind of just decided in the first turn or two, and they just have to be careful balancing because they want them to be quick games. The whole point of this game is that it's using the mobile game format. It's specifically speed duels. They specifically want games to be quick and over in a few turns. But losing on the first turn is just too much. And you can't lose on the very first turn in this meta, at least not consistently. We had the bamboo deck for a bit where you could, but if you're going first and your opponent goes second and then they win on their first turn, that's essentially the same thing. I mean, you had a small chance to respond, but they Hey-True-Nated it or whatever. It's not a meaningful chance to respond. So that is an issue sometimes, and it might be an issue right now as well.
Doug Diamond Duel, Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck Talk sent us a few things. Favorite meme deck? Can you name one off the top of your head? I'm thinking of one where there was the wetlands, with the, I don't know if this ever became a deck, but there was a wetlands with those direct attackers that were like a Gucci or whatever they were called, and then the Paleozoic cards.
Yeah, one of them got top 4 in a Duel Links meta weekly, right? So that's enough of a thing for me. It's a great success. I don't know. It obviously depends on what constitutes a meme deck. Because there's a lot of tier 4 and below decks that I really like. I named a couple of them at the top of the show. I'm enjoying Gem Knights, for instance. But I don't think that constitutes a meme deck. It's kind of just
struggling grinder deck.
Yeah, it's a normal deck that's not meta.
Was Ice Barriers meme? they were kind of there in that level. They were like a very early Kawaki Mei deck.
Yeah, yeah, they were definitely meta for a bit. Um, there was this fun or crazy deck where, unfortunately, I don't remember what any of the cards are called, but it was like there's an equip card that says like when you destroy when the equipped monster destroys something, then its owner takes damage. Do you remember that?
Mm.
And then the guy played the tomato.
Oh, those
And
the Inmato, right?
yeah, yeah, the Inmatos, and then it basically the deck revolved around he played this equip card, whatever it was, on his opponent's monster, and then he just continually ran Inmatos into his opponent's monster, and in doing so, his opponent took like 800 per Inmato, and he just and because they when they die they summon each other, he just did that until his opponent died. And now I wish I knew the names of like anything and could find it because that was kind of cool. That's my favorite meme deck, I guess. It's the only one I can really think of.
I forgot where I saw that. I mean, we saw the same thing, or it was a replay somewhere. I forget what it was.
Yeah, I think it was like a replay that one of us ended up retweeting from the account or something. I don't know.
Oh no, someone
But
posted on Twitter. I remember now.
yeah, and that was awesome. And you wanted to find out what the card was, and I ended up finding it just through the collection manager,
Right,
just based on the picture and what type of card it was. So
right.
anyway, if you go back through old tweets, you can find it.
Archetypes you wish were never added to Duel Links. I think I know what you're gonna say here.
Mm, I don't have a specific one. I mean, I guess there are some that I didn't really like the Sylvan guys.
Oh yeah, that's mine. That's mine.
Okay, that was yours. Is mine for hire? Is that what you were
I think so. I
expecting?
think you didn't like that deck. Yeah.
I really didn't like that deck. That's true. I guess, yeah, I guess so. I mean, we talked about it when it was big. It's important for the game to have archetypes that are cheap and at least moderately competitive.
Yeah.
Uh, the biggest problem, though, in my opinion, is when you make the very best deck in the game also the cheapest deck, and the trifecta to just like destroy the meta is when it's the best deck, the cheapest deck, and the easiest deck to play, which might have been the Sylvans. Because when you have all three of those, you're pretty much guaranteeing that the ladder or just all competitive play is dominated by this deck because everyone has access to it, everyone can play it, and everyone can win with it because it's the best deck. And so that I've never liked metas where that is the case. I prefer where the best deck is a little bit more difficult to play, but I will take the situation where the best deck is easy to play but expensive because at least then I'm not seeing it every single game, and I'm
Right.
probably not playing it, so I don't feel like I'm the bad guy. So,
The
you
control
know,
decks are definitely in that boat. I'd say.
where they're the best.
No, they're expensive, but not the best. Like Gemini,
Oh
the
yeah,
Gemini deck, for example. Yeah.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean that to me isn't even a problem. Where it's if you take out the it's the best portion, then it's not even really in the consideration for me as a problematic deck, unless it makes for just really bad play experience situations like that bamboo deck did, where people were just like, okay, even though this deck only works whatever 51% of the time, every single time that it does its thing, I just literally can't do anything, and then so it feels like that's a terrible feeling. So unless it is that type of terrible feeling, as long as the deck isn't particularly good, I don't really
Yeah.
care what else it's doing.
I wasn't a fan of spellbooks either, just because it took forever. I mean, I was a vampire player, and I took forever to but spellbooks took forever times two, I think.
Yeah, that's similar to the bamboo feeling, where it's just a
Yeah.
bad play feeling regardless of how good or bad the deck is. You're just like, I hate playing against this deck. I think that was part of the reason, I think we talked about it before, but I think that was part of the reason why you hated Sylvan specifically, was that it it was one of the best, it was one of the cheapest, is super easy to play, and then also on top of that, it had this really bad play experience where it felt like it was super RNG based.
RNG, yeah.
random results,
Number,
and
yeah,
then so you feel like you're losing to things that you just have no control over because you
right.
can't manipulate their deck. They can a little bit, but you don't really have anything to say over if they flip over the card that they needed to. And so that's just another feels bad moment when there's too much RNG in the game. And
Right.
so,
Spellbooks didn't have that. At least they
no.
kind well no they had the thing where you pick three, right? I mean that's kind of not really RNG, but
Yeah, and then for a little while there was the spellbooks that had the grass looks greener version, which was a bit more RNG, but for the most part it was not
yeah.
super RNG. It's a pretty non RNG deck actually, in fact, as far as they go.
Thoughts on the TCG's new speed duel format? So we did talk about this a few weeks ago, and it seems like well they did release a new like the TCG's speed duel format. You can't use your old cards. It's a separate card game. They released the really weak monsters, and they have skills like Duel Links. They have character skills. So I think it works great. They're going to go hand in hand. Duel Links is going to inform what skills to add next. The TCG Speed Duel might have skills that inform Duel Links. So it's great that they'll work off each other, and I hope it's fun. I hope it revitalizes the card game. I think some people liked playing the simpler cards, and it's like a new way for them to do that. I think you can buy the box for like $10 too, so it seems cheaper than it used to be.
Yeah, I think it's pulling on a lot of the appeal of Duel Links in the first place, where it's kind of just like a simpler way to play, bringing you back to your roots. You can just kind of grab. Duel Links has this accessibility where you can just play whenever, of course, but it also has that, since it's cheap to play, it has a similar accessibility aspect where you can just grab a couple of these boxes, I guess, and just grab one structure deck for you and one for your buddy and just play a quick game whenever you want. And so I think I think it's hidden on a lot of the things that they wanted it to hit on and that they got a lot of value out of in Duel Links. And if I were the type of person who still went to the card shop and stuff, I assure you that my card shop, they bought a bunch of these, and then people would just kind of come in and be like, "Hey, you want to do a speed duel, whatever, best of three?" And people would just do that because I know that's what they used to do with structure decks and and early decks and stuff, where they would just buy it and like do a quick one, probably put some money on the line or something, because that's the kind of degenerates that were at my card shop back in the day. But they would just be like, yeah, all right, let's go, let's do a quick one while we're waiting for between our rounds or whatever, even at the tournament. So I think that it was a really good call on their part. And one thing that I liked that you mentioned and kind of thought of last time we talked about this is that it seems like one of the huge benefits of playing a digital card game is that the creator gets just so much stats and information. Normally, when that you build just a paper product and you put it out there, then you have to send out surveys and you have to like ask your stores what's selling and all of that.
Yeah.
And you have to look at sales and look at player responses and go on Twitter and go on the forums and all that to try to just get as much information as you can about what worked and what didn't. When you were playing a digital card game, Mark Rosewater, who works on Magic, has worked on it for like 20 years. He has a podcast every week. I listen to it all the time. He talks about how it's the exact opposite. When you have the digital version of the card game, you just get so much information that you instead have to figure out what's important. You have to like filter through it and try to have someone like translate it for you into what is working or not, because it's the exact opposite problem where there's just like all this info. And so I think the success of Duel Links both showed them that they can do this format, the speed duel format thing, and also will help inform it in the future, where what works in Duel Links, what skills are broken and what's not, and they can test stuff out in Duel Links, and then if it doesn't work, they can change it later, like they have changed stuff, or they can ban and restrict stuff, and then based on that, they can decide how to build these TCG versions of it essentially, and do it better for that. And that's important because you can't really change the TCG, the physical versions nearly as easily. You can make like banned and restricted lists, but then that kind of sucks because the whole point is that it's a pre-con, easy to play thing. So it's much easier if they just make them right the first time and and not have to touch it. And I think that Duel Links does a good job of helping them do that.
Yeah, definitely. Ban list predictions. I guess we could just name a deck that we think is going to get nerfed next. It's surprising that, well, Masked Heroes did get a tiny nerf, and that did nothing to them. I think Kawaki Meru probably would be the next one.
Yeah, I think so too. It seems like it's been the top deck since it came out, essentially, but I don't know if it's been a problem. It's been the top deck, but not like by so much that nothing else can exist.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. So I might predict, I'm going to go rogue here and predict that nothing in this cycle gets nerfed, and that we just go and we get the next round of cards, or maybe the round after that, but soon we're going to get some round of cards that just breaks the game, and then we're going to have nerfs. So that's my prediction.
Up Duel Links YouTubers. I must say that I'm not a person... I used to watch Twitch more than YouTube, and now I don't really watch Twitch either. But I definitely have enjoyed YouTube Dan's videos. He had some videos about, like... I think it was, like, he left his girlfriend for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something. I forget what it was. It was pretty funny, like, real stuff.
That is funny and a little sad.
Or his girlfriend left him because he was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something. I forget what it was. It was
yeah. Yeah, I've seen those situations before. My buddy in college essentially dumped his girlfriend so he could play League.
Oh, that's more addictive, I think.
Yeah, well, but he was like, all right, he was pre-med at the time, and he's like, I'm pre-med, I'm on the Ultimate Frisbee team, I've got this other thing, I've got my League. Oh no, it was Warcraft. Whatever. They had raids.
That's even more addictive, Warcraft.
Yeah. He was like, I have to raid, and I just don't have time for all those things and a girlfriend, so I dump my girlfriend.
You just got a new Blood Elf online.
For dumping his girlfriend?
I mean, there's like another one. There's probably like some Blood Elf running around out there in the game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, to answer the specific question, I don't really use YouTube, like, for anything.
Right.
Every once in a while, I'll see something that looks good on Twitter. So shout out to all of our Twitter friends who share stuff and do, a lot of great content over there. It's just not really a platform that I use very often. So I only go there when I kind of get redirected from other people. But there is a lot of it. There's a lot of good stuff. And I support all other content creators who are trying their best to make that good stuff and make it work.
Yeah, definitely. Dual Puzzles, Luke tweeting under Dual Puzzles says, moments of doubt when creating podcasts, thinking about stopping. So I guess I'll take this one. Moments of doubt. So I started this podcast almost 2 years ago because, technically this is episode 99 and episode 104 would be the 2-year anniversary. So we're almost at 2 years. And it was very difficult learning how to do it. I think because we use a very convoluted system. A lot of people who do podcasts do it in a way it's just handed to them. And that's what they pay for. But I had to do it a very convoluted way. And the first day, I remember, the first podcast took me an entire day to do. Like, almost 8 hours of editing the sound, because the sound was messed up. I think the sound was messed up for a really long time. It's still not good, but we have managed it in a way that it's not horrible. So, and also the way we do it, it's kind of a lot of trial and error. Sometimes it doesn't. WordPress has to get pushed a few times, like 2 or 3 times for the podcast to actually go up. I have to check Castbox to see if it's actually up, and then I know I could breathe for a second. So there are times when that happens. I guess one very good thing is that we were very consistent for these 100 episodes. I think we each missed like 2 episodes each, something like that. Oh, what was that? Speaking of bad audio, I don't know. Your mic just fell, right?
That was me agreeing with you so forcefully that I accidentally knocked over my microphone. So,
oh no!
There you go.
Oh man.
What a
Um.
noob.
Yeah. Thinking about stopping. So this is something that crosses my mind all the time, actually, and I guess it's you make content for a reason. There's reasons. There's many reasons you make content. We're very happy to do this, and I guess when you get to a point where you don't enjoy it anymore, that's when you know you have to stop doing something. Not really not enjoying it. If you're making a ton of money out of it or you're a huge success, then you just keep going. But um, there are the reasons, and life could come too. I don't have a ton of commitments right now, so I guess I'm okay with it. But let's say someone has a kid, someone gets married, someone has a really demanding job. There are many reasons that you would stop as a podcaster, and those are legitimate reasons. And there are also ones internal too, so it's your own personal struggle if you want to do it anymore, or if there's time for something else. So, there are always those issues.
Yeah, and I think that that's basically it. There's a lot of reasons why someone does do any of their content creation. Um, it it can be monetary based. It never was for us.
No, no.
We have had some patrons, and we definitely support and appreciate that. That's really awesome that you guys decide to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not the reason why we do this. We didn't have them to begin with, and it's never been like enough to, really really pay for the bills or anything like that. We've been doing it because basically we started. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I have a long drive to and from work, and I was like, "There's no Duel Links podcast," and you, Green Ranger, were just like, "Why don't we make one?" And I'm like,
Yeah, I was unemployed,
okay.
so I had the time.
I was like, all right, and then so we did, and so we've always been motivated by just kind of doing that, and then when you guys got behind us,
Hmm.
that really kind of solidified it, where it's like, well, we can't stop because people are going to miss their episode this week, and that's really cool, and even when you don't love the game, sometimes it's hard to step away because you have
Yeah,
that. Not really obligation, but you feel like you want to give it to the people who really love it, and who are showing you appreciation by listening every week. So you want to show them appreciation by continuing to do what you're doing. So
right.
it's
Exactly.
a tough call.
Yep.
Can be.
And yep. Last question: Magic Pond Zero. Objective opinions of the card pool power creep discussion. Magic Pond specifically mentioned Sonic Bird. I think that's a card you're more familiar with than me. You're more of the ritual guy. I think you played Relinquished and Cyber Angels for a bit, but I guess some of the thing that we could talk about is there's no card cycle in Yu-Gi-Oh. They don't rotate out cards. Hearthstone does 2 years. Shadowverse does like the thing where they rotate one set when the new set comes out. So there's like 5 sets in a row. Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have that. They have the ban list. So I guess we could talk about like duration, like how long should an archetype or a card be in the card pool, I guess. Like one example we mentioned is how Masked Heroes have been around for a while.
Yeah. First, on like just a basic level, I think it's a mistake that Yu-Gi-Oh does not have a rotation system. I think it's interesting, and it seems like Yu-Gi-Oh just likes to do everything differently from other card games.
Yeah.
And maybe some of its fans are here specifically for that reason. That might be the case. I don't know. They probably have a better sense of that than I do. And so that might be part of the reason why they decided not to do the rotation. But rotations they just make it so much easier to have balance. And it's not that like easy is better. Like we don't expect game designers to be quote lazy, but easy is better in the sense that it's taking away a hurdle that makes the game worse, so that you just have it streamlines making the game better. And so not having any sort of rotation system means that they have to do power creep. It's required because otherwise no one would buy the new stuff and the game would get incredibly stale and boring. It's not just a matter of like sales. They obviously want people to buy the new stuff, so they make it new and exciting and better than the stuff in the past. but also we want to play the new stuff, like as the gamers, as the players. Otherwise, we get bored with the game, and it just gets harder and harder. We've seen it. URs in the first box are now trash cards in the most recent boxes, right? I have like 4 of the battle oxes. Summon Skull was one of the best cards. Actually, it was never really good in this game, but back in original Yu-Gi-Oh, it was one of the best cards, and now it's just not playable. And so I think that is an issue with the game, and it makes it so that your purchases don't really have like lasting value, because you know that it's essentially going to get power creeped over time, and you just don't know when. Like at a certain point, it's just going to get power creeped, and it feels bad, especially in Duel Links, because there's no way to kind of convert your cards that have essentially been crept out of the game into something you can use now. So I guess those are my thoughts on the rotation. Pulling up the question again to see what else.
I guess one thing that they do to help that a little is they sometimes revisit stuff to make them better, and that your cards are never really gone. So you're playing. I don't know if they do that often for the TCG. I feel like they do, but then they're introducing new stuff, so it gets diluted a lot, so it doesn't make much of a difference.
Yeah. Another downside of having such a large card pool is that at a certain point, like, only the very most devoted players can really know, like, everything. There's just so many cards, right? And so sometimes I'll be playing against something and I'm just like, okay, apparently they're playing this archetype I haven't really played against before. Maybe played it once or twice, but I don't know it. And because I don't know this weird interaction, I just accidentally punted the game. Or there's so many different combat-based spells and traps that I just play around nothing because I just don't even know. I don't know what's going to be there. There's too many options, and so it doesn't make sense for me to play around stuff. And I don't think we're quite at that phase. We do still have a pretty defined meta, but it does seem like, I don't know, fairly inevitable, especially if they're constantly changing stuff. So I think that's a downside to having such a large card pool as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a growing issue. I mean, it's going to be an emerging issue, but yeah, I haven't hit that yet either. I think like the cards that are unrecognizable because of art, or like the number of cards you recognize from the art. I think it's hard. They haven't rolled out the mechanics as fast, I guess. So like we don't have XZs or pendulums yet. So I guess it's good they're holding off on that before we know. But yeah, obviously, when more and more cards are released, it's just testing your memory, testing your knowledge bank, I guess, things like that.
Yeah, especially since Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, we have a lot of time in our turns in this game, so you could just sit there and read each card. But some of the cards have like full paragraphs on them, and you're just like, ugh, I have to do this while the clicker, like the timer's going off in the corner, and you're just like, the stress of that.
Yeah.
So that's not fun, but we're not there yet. But I do think that is a downside of having such a large card pool, as well as the power creep issue, and just the lasting value of your cards, which is kind of like an inherent issue of power creep. So yeah, basically, just to sum it up, I do think it's a mistake for them not to have a rotation system, but my understanding is that Yu-Gi-Oh's never had a rotation system, and it seems to be working for them, and it might be the draw for some other, group of players, perhaps. So, who am I guess, to decide that? I don't know. I don't have the market research or anything on if it would make it better or worse for more of their players.
Did Magic have one? I don't know.
Yeah, Magic. Well, what Magic did, which we don't see in a lot of other games, is that they have a ton of formats. So when I played Magic most aggressively, they had a format called Type 1, which was just like essentially all the cards with a few cards that were just banned, and restricted, and then Type 1.5, which was essentially, it was the same pool, but it had a bigger banned, I think everything that was on the banned and restricted was all banned, if I recall correctly. We never really played that one. And then they had like extended, which was just a big pool of cards, and then standard, which was the 2-year rotation. They even had block, which was just 1-year rotation format. They had all kinds of like other formats that people would play, less in organized play, but more just like on their own. They were recognized formats that have like rules to them. And so when you have all of those different formats, then it's really cool because you can either just agree between your friends, or you can go to an event where the format's announced and you have more options for those various things. So if you're the type of player who really likes playing with all the cards and doesn't mind the fact that all your decks are going to be crazy broken and whatnot, then yeah, you go play Type 1. That's awesome. You get to buy cards that you know have just lasting value, right? They have the Black Lotus that's been around since the beginning of the game, that has always been played in in Type 1 or whatever it's called now, and so that's really cool. Some players really like that. Some players like to play extended because it meant that you got to play your favorite standard deck even longer. Some players like the smaller card pools of standard or block that just are constantly changing, and that's really awesome. You can't do that as well in digital games because you have to set up like a whole hierarchy to allow you to queue into other people who are playing that. You have to, and sometimes it's ugly UI where you have to like do like a drop down menu of I want to play with this format and these cards are banned, but these cards are okay, and
right,
whatnot. Whereas if you're just kind of playing in real life, you can just decide between your friends or decide to throw a tournament saying, hey, we're playing this format, and because we don't like them, we're banning this card. And everyone agrees to it, so it's cool. And there's a lot of benefits to playing online, but I think that that's one of the benefits of playing in real life that online hasn't really been able to figure out how to replicate yet.
Yep. So that's it. That's it for our celebration. We've answered our questions. Hopefully that was very useful. All that information.
Hopefully you at least had fun with it.
Yes.
I had fun, kind of just yammering on for a bit. So
It's good to talk about something a little different that wasn't specific. I mean, we did talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, but you kind of showed us your repertoire there.
yeah, I've been playing card games forever, so I've got a couple experiences with other games and brought it over. And anyway, thanks so much for writing in, guys. That was lots of fun, and thanks for listening also.
Yeah. We're looking forward to episode 200, aren't we? All right.
Yeah, well, 4 years.
Yeah. Upcoming news, Casey Cup's going to go on. Duel Quest, new characters, Loomis and Umbra, most likely. Duelist challenges, and we get to obtain Tyranno Hasselberry. Some of his skills have been leaked, so check those out. There's one called Dino DNA, obviously, where you gain life every turn, so that might be some annoying stall deck down the pipe. Thanks to everyone who contributed. Thanks to everyone who has supported us for episode 100. That's it. You can check out our podcast. Find the Dual Assessment Podcast, and you'll find this online. That's it for this week. Thanks for great episode 100.
Thanks, guys.